Welcome. My name is William Messakar. I am a master model railroader in the 4th Division of the Pacific Northwest region of the National Model Railroad Association. I want to welcome all of you to the virtual layout tour we'll have presented today by members of the NMRA. We would encourage you to find out about the NMRA and join in order to participate in these virtual tours. We have other virtual clinics and other activities for the National Model Railroad Association that we think you'll find a big help to your modeling, and you'll get to meet model railroaders just like you. So welcome to our tour, and I hope you enjoy it.
I'm Steve Carter. I'm president of the PSMRE, and Marshall Wilson is our chief engineer and founder and designer of the layout. A lot of credit goes to Marshall for what this thing looks like. Before I hand this over to Marshall via the videos, I'd just like to mention that while the layout is considered finished, like most layouts, it never really will be. And to that end, we still have projects ongoing, including the signaling. So you'll likely see numerous push pins around the layout, which represent signal locations.
Hi, welcome to the Puget Sound Model Railroad Engineers Model Railroad Exhibit. I'm Marshall Wilson, one of the founders of and the major layout designer of this model railroad display, which is a historically based, fully operational model railroad. We're located on the 5th floor of the Washington State History Museum on Pacific Avenue, right next to the train station in downtown Tacoma. PSMRE is a non-for-profit club of volunteers that was formed in 1995 under contract with the Washington State Historical Society to build, maintain, and operate a museum-quality model railroad, which depicts the railroads that served Washington State, where they went, what they did, and the importance they played in the development of our state. Model railroad-wise, it gives us the opportunity to introduce the hobby to the public year-round, as well as present and preserve the artistry of some of the region's finest modelers, whose workmanship will be on public display, hopefully long after we're gone. The Puget Sound region was chosen to model due to the high amount of railroad presence and one of the few areas in the state where most of the railroads were close enough together to depict realistically. The area modeled runs from the Nelson Bennett Tunnel in Ruston through Tacoma, Reservation, then up the Puyallup Valley through Puyallup to Auburn. From there, one line runs north to Seattle and the other runs east up the NP's first subdivision through East Auburn, Canasket, Lester to Stampede, where it exits across the Cascades to points east. The Northern Pacific Railroad was selected as the major road as Tacoma was originally its western terminus, and with NP's Union Station next door, well, the choice was fairly obvious. The era chosen was the transition era of the 1950s, so that we could realistically run steam, a more diverse variety of rolling stock, pre-merger and pre-Amtrak, which allowed us to show off the beauty of each road's crack passenger fleet in all of its colorful glory.
Now let's look at how that's been depicted on the model. Here's a diagram of the layout. Notice that it's divided into 3 sections. The bottom diagram is the staging level and is all hidden trackage. The yard, which represents both Portland and Seattle, can hold up to 16 trains, and with a return loop at either end, enables any train in staging to be able to appear from the north or from the south. For example, trains traveling north leave the staging yard and climb a long 2.5% grade to appear from the tunnel at Asarco on the double-track main level. They then travel through Old Town, past Union Station, through the Tacoma Head of Bay Yard, past the industrial end of Tacoma, past Reservation, and then on through Puyallup and Auburn. From here, trains traveling to Seattle disappear from view, go around the back of the dispatcher's desk and down the helix and back into staging. Of course, southbound trains run the opposite. At Auburn, eastbound trains enter the Y, which takes them up the Stampede line through East Auburn, Canasket, and then to the upper shelf, passing through Lester, across the High Bridge, and through Stampede, entering tunnel number 4 to another hidden 6-track staging yard which represents all points east. Milwaukee and UP trains share the same lower level staging yard, but split off on their own tracks as they pass behind the dispatcher's desk. Their tracks then parallel the NP through Auburn and Puyallup. The UP crosses the river and joins the NP main at Reservation, while the Milwaukee freights proceed to their own yard in the Tide Flats, and the passenger trains end their journey at the old passenger station in downtown Tacoma. Having described all that, let's have a look at the real thing. Here's an overall view of the layout as seen by visitors as they approach the display from the east entrance. The layout is 80 feet long by 13 feet wide, extending to 20 feet wide at the leftmost end. From here, you can see the entire extent of the layout, which was one of the requirements of the museum. Unfortunately, this defeats one of the model railroad's basic operation tenets of using scenic dividers to separate scenes in order to enhance the feeling of distance when following your train around. But for the public, it allows a greater visibility. The arch on the back wall is a relief of the exterior arch in the architecture of the museum. It made a good surface to put a painting of Mount Rainier. The photographs and the reading rail along the front edge of the display reference the model or scene being depicted, along with some historical or descriptive facts. Moving along the main aisle, the model of Tacoma's Union Station comes into view. This was the last major structure to be placed on the display in December of 2018. Though this represented the official end of the construction phase of the exhibit, many detail and electrical projects continue. We'll look at the station in greater detail a little later. The button in front of the station lets patrons start a progression of 6 trains to run around a segment of the railroad. The automated trains represent the roads that were present in Washington State during the 1950s, the Northern Pacific, the Great Northern, and Union Pacific, which all shared trackage rights through Tacoma. The Milwaukee Road is also represented, but it has its own trackage and facilities as it came into Washington years later than the others and was electrified. All of the structures on the layout were scratch-built using photos, maps, building plans, and sometimes personal memories to get the most accurate recreation of each structure. About 75% of the structures on the layout are recreations of the actual buildings that existed during the period, and some still exist today. The double glass doors offer easy access to the interior of the layout. This recess, another requirement of the museum, also allows visitors a closer look at the display on the back wall, as well as another perspective of the layout when looking down the length of the room. From here, you can see 3 levels of the railroad. The lowest is the 16-track staging level, which represents Seattle and Portland, the main level above that, and the upper level with the line to Stampede Pass. The area to the right of the doors represents the NP Main from Auburn to Stampede, showing the East Auburn Station in front and the town of Canasket at the higher level. The open door behind gives access to what is affectionately known as the pit, which contains the computers that run the railroad, as well as the dispatcher's desk. The clock above is one of the fast clocks used during operations. The hillside in this section also hides 2 important operational functions: the return loop at the end of the automated train circuit and a 2.5-turn double-track helix, which connects the main level with the staging level. The glass panels are 3/8-inch tempered glass, each of which can either be lowered to 6 inches above the railing or lifted out completely for maintenance or cleaning. The final scene depicts some of the Green River crossings through the foothills of the Cascades and is one of the most picturesque scenes on the railroad. Now I'd like to show you some of the wonderful structures and scenic elements around the railroad. The American Smelting and Refining Company, ASARCO, was a large copper smelter that once was one of the largest employers in Tacoma. We're only modeling a few of the many buildings in this complex. Arsenic and lead pollution finally led to its closing in the 1980s. The Leybold Smith Shingle Mill. Note how Ruston Way went up on a raised wood roadway to get over the conveyor, bringing in cedar logs from Commencement Bay. The Dickman Lumber Company, the last operating lumber mill on the Foss Waterway, operating into the 70s until a fire shut it down for good. The base of the chip burner and the pilings of some of the buildings are still visible along Ruston Way. This is the McCarver Street crossing with the Old Town Dock, the fish market, and the Top of the Ocean restaurant. Across the tracks stood the McCarver Street Station and the Spar Tavern. Here's the Sperry Flour Mill complex. Note the road that runs under the silo at the left. The trestle to the drawbridge line, the 15th Street Bridge, and the 15th Street Tower. This is Union Station, our centerpiece. The structure was crafted by Gail Hendrickson, who meticulously built this building in the garage over a period of 20 years. Using original building drawings and blueprints, he recreated the building in the finest detail. The interior is completely finished and lighted, with 75 figures that can be seen through the large front windows. Gail was assisted by several other club members on the interior details, figures, and platforms, but all of the original castings and moldings are his. The lintels in the windows are built up from layers of etched brass produced by a local Tacoma firm. Sadly, Gail passed away just 7 months after this diorama was installed. We are very proud to have this beautiful piece of artwork to preserve his legacy. This is NP's Tacoma Roundhouse and Turntable. The roundhouse is long gone, but the turntable still exists and is still used occasionally to spin a locomotive. Here's the Head of Bay Yard, one of the 3 yards on the railroad. Note that the main runs down the middle, making an additional challenge for yard crews. The Brown and Haley Chocolate Factory opened from the aisle to reveal complete interior detail. This is the Milwaukee Road's original passenger station down on 25th Street before they moved to a newer, smaller station down near their freight yards, and this building was torn down, I believe, sometime in the 60s. Just down the street from the passenger station was the Milwaukee Road's Freight Warehouse. That's the gray building in back. The long wood trestle was built to connect the Milwaukee station with the bridge across the Puyallup River. The Freight House still exists today and is now known as Freight House Square. It's located just down the street from the Tacoma Dome. It's filled with little shops and is Tacoma's sounder station. This is Reservation Tower, a well-known landmark to Tacoma railroaders, with the Milwaukee's Bay Street Bridge to the right. I've heard it said that upwards of 40 trains pass this tower each day. Here's an overall view of the Tide Flats. This is a generic representation of the industrial port of Tacoma, with industries typical of those that were there during our era. This area is serviced by several trains at different times during op sessions and makes an excellent local switching location. The barge slip was designed to have several barges with different destinations, which serves as another form of interchange. As was mentioned before, too many folks have contributed their modeling talents to the display to name here individually, but each structure and its builder are listed proudly on the wall at the visitor's aisle. Here are some of the bridges across the Puyallup River. This is the Milwaukee Freight Yard, a single-ended yard built on a finger out into Commencement Bay. That's Buffalin Woodworking in back. Hooker Chemical had a large facility in Tacoma with a highly recognizable building. The Puyallup Fruit Packing Company starts our journey up the Puyallup Valley. Here we're looking at a scene of a typical Puyallup Valley farm. Here's the station in downtown Puyallup. This is Vancouver Door. Notice the lumber theme? Alpine Cold Storage. The Clemens Furniture Company. Today, it's an antique store. The Meeker Mansion, a full-scale replica of the house built by Ezra Meeker, a Puyallup pioneer who came over the Oregon Trail by ox and wagon and built this house for his wife. The model is built entirely of styrene by Bob Stump. The mansion is now a museum and open to the public. Moving into Auburn, this is the icing facility. Block ice was brought down from Seattle in refrigerator cars, pushed up the ramp, and then reloaded into the waiting reefers below. This is an overall picture of Auburn Yard. The diesel engine house modified to fit the space. One iteration of the roundhouse, once much larger but torn down section by section. And finally, the Auburn Passenger Station and Freight House. Going east out of Auburn, this is the small station at East Auburn. The Neely Mansion, east of Auburn, another museum. Several bridges across the Green River. The Headworks Dam and Reservoir at Eagle Gorge. The town of Canasket and the NP water tank. Last I knew, the station was still there, but abandoned and in ruins. Here's an overall view of the town of Lester from a drone, showing from the bottom up the station master's house, the Lester Hotel, and the roundhouse and machine shop. We were able to fit in 3 stalls of the actual 6-stall roundhouse. A picture of the depot from the rear. Unfortunately, due to the orientation of the town, the trackside faces the wall. This is the residential part of Lester. Here's the log reload facility at the east end of town. Here's the High Bridge, number 56, just east of Lester. Notice the masterful transition from the shelf to lower level and back to shelf by the scenery department. Now check this out. This is the model. And here is the real bridge. Cool, huh? And finally, the station at New Stampede and the entrance to tunnel number 4. And that concludes our photo tour. Now, through the photographic wizardry of Steve Carter, our club president, we climb aboard the cab of an old F-unit for a ride across the railroad from the engineer's view. Our first ride takes us down from Ruston through Tacoma, out through Reservation, Puyallup, and into Auburn. Our trip starts in Portland, but the video picks up as we exit the stack tunnel that runs under the flume and stack of the Sarco smelter in Ruston. This is the Northern Pacific main line between Portland and Seattle, but the GN and UP share trackage rights as well. We're traveling toward Tacoma, with Ruston Way off to the left. The dispatcher has cleared the line, so we should have a clear track ahead. We're approaching the McCarver Street Station and McCarver Street Crossing. This is the Sperry Mill plant, with the flour mill off to the right and the ocean dock on to the left. Passing under the drawbridge line across the Foss Waterway and the 15th Street Bridge. Now you can see Union Station coming up on the right. And we've got the coach yard right next to the main line. Passing under the 21st Street Bridge and the A Street crossing coming into downtown Tacoma. Passing around the back of the roundhouse and approaching the D Street crossing. This is the NP's main yard in Tacoma, the Head of Bay Yard. It's also the largest yard on our railroad. It can hold up to 130 cars. The old yard is on the right, and the main yard is to the left. Here's the Brown and Haley Candy Factory, home of Almond Roca. Now past the Head of Bay Yard, we're coming into the eastern part of Tacoma, the industrial end, and we've got a lot of line-side industries. The Milwaukee line is off to the right with the famous S-curve trestle. Now approaching Reservation. Uh-oh, looks like we've got a red signal. We've got permission to pass the red signal, so we're off and running. Coming up on the left is the Reservation Tower. Many of the structures on our layout are completely interior decorated and lit, including this one. The UP train must have been diverted. Looks like they may still be working on their bridge. Passing under the Milwaukee line and up along the Puyallup River. Now we're entering the Puyallup Valley, passing one of the many fruit packing plants along the line. Puyallup is a very fertile valley and was well known for its vegetables, fruits, and flowers. Now we're coming into the town of Puyallup. Puyallup passenger station on the left, where the sounder now stops. And there's the Meeker Mansion on the right. Now we're entering the town of Auburn. This is Auburn Yard on the right-hand side, and a GN Freight must be waiting to get down into reservation. A brief stop here to pick up another crew member, and we'll be on the way to Seattle. Up on the left is the Auburn passenger station, which we had to move a couple blocks south to make it fit on the layout. After that, we'll be crossing under the Allentown Covered Bridge, a structure that's actually up in Tukwila, but I wanted it moved down because it's such a unique building. From here, trains run north to Seattle, down the Helix and into Staging Yard. Back in Auburn, with a new crew, let's ride up the Stampede line through Canasket, Leicester, and on through Stampede. Departing from Auburn Yard, we'll take the south leg of the Y and head east. Here's the East Auburn station, where passengers from Tacoma would catch the North Coast Limited going to Chicago. Up ahead is the Neely Mansion. A building that still survives today and is still open to the public. Looks like we've got traffic ahead of us. We'll have to wait till the signal clears. The line up the west side of the Cascades basically follows the Green River Gorge, so there'll be many crossings of the Green River. The first one out of Auburn is the bridge just ahead. Now further up the line, we're approaching the town of Conascut. Now back on the grade, here's another Green River crossing. Off to the left you can see the Headworks Dam as we enter the Tacoma watershed, the primary source for water to the Tacoma area. One more crossing of the river and we're back into another tunnel. While I have mentioned few names of the many modelers who have contributed to the exhibit, for fear of inadvertently missing one, I feel compelled to mention our scenery engineer, Paul Rising, who, along with his scenery crew, created the many scenic elements such as the one we're passing through. Paul also painted all of the backdrops in the gallery and is responsible for many buildings and scenic details as well. Comes one more crossing of the Green River and we'll be entering the town of Leicester. We've recreated many of the structures in Leicester, including the hotel, the roundhouse and turntable, and the depot. Looks like we've got a red board here. We're going to have to stop and pick up orders. Back aboard, we've picked up orders to meet the westbound North Coast Limited number 25 at Stampede. We put a log reload facility here at the east end of Leicester, representing the logging and lumber industry so important to the development of the Pacific Northwest. Now out onto the High Bridge, which during our era was double-tracked. Due to space restrictions, we couldn't include the Borum Loop. I know, a favorite spot for Western Railroad fans. So now we're coming into Stampede. And here comes number 25 right on time. From here, trains will travel into tunnel number 4, across the Cascades, and into Yakima and points east. On our railroad, it enters a hidden staging track behind the line of trees. Finally, we'll take a short run into a couple of the industrial areas on the layout. The first goes down into the Tide Flats, the port area of Tacoma. This area is actually serviced by the Tacoma Municipal Beltline, now Tacoma Rail, but we didn't have enough room to properly justify another railroad. Most of the industries here are representative of the types of industry and not particular structures. The spur comes off of the main reservation. One leg goes past the log dump and ends at the barge slip. This side is serviced by the Milwaukee Road. The other leg, serviced by the Northern Pacific, runs down past the stock pens of Karsten's Meatpacking. around the back of Barnacle Bill's Tavern, past the Simon & Sons scrapyard, to the Ocean Dock warehouse. The other spur is called the Asarco Lead and runs from Tacoma's Head of Bay Yard to Ruston, servicing all the industries along the Foss Waterway all the way to the Asarco smelter. Along the way, we pass the Sperry Flour Mill and Ocean Dock. The top of the Ocean Restaurant, the Dickman Lumber Company, Leibold Smith's Shingle Mill, and into the Asarco complex. This run makes for a fun switching turn. In normal times, we run operating sessions every month from February through December on the first Saturday. Also, at Christmas time, we have Model Train Festival, which runs between Christmas and New Year's. If you live in the local area and would like to join us, we're always open for new members. I hope you enjoyed our train layout. Thanks for watching.
So that pretty much concludes our presentation. Hope that turned out as well as we hoped it did. I guess we can take questions if there is some out there.
What's the COVID situation in visiting?
The museum has restrictions like every other museum as far as the number of people that can be there at a given time. I think they're at 25% right now, which for all practical purposes doesn't change anything because it's rarely more than 25% capacity in there anyways. So it's for visitors, it's pretty much the same as it has been in the past. Our access is rather limited though.
When you hold operating sessions, how many people operate, and also how's the dispatching done?
Well, we usually have between 10 to 15 people operating. We have a dispatcher. There's a dispatcher's desk. Right now we use a magnetic board mainly to track trains, but we were gradually transitioning to using a computer and train controller software.
How many people are involved in an operating session?
We vary between 10 and 15 people. It's over the years, it's sort of, declined a little bit, but that's about where we typically are.
Where we can operate with as few as 5, and I think our maximum we had 18 one day.
How many members in the club?
About 45.
45. And what is the age group? You getting some younger members involved?
We do have some, but like the hobby in general, it's aging.
Can you say anything about the signaling system?
Sure. The signaling system is running on the back of the train controller software. So while in train controller it's complete, the Stampede line has been completed with the semaphores, and we're just beginning to start installing we're just beginning to start installing signals on the lower level.
Did you post the cab ride video on YouTube or something?
Well, as I understand it, this entire presentation will be put on YouTube, but we will have links on our Facebook page to the 3 videos, yes, on Vimeo, not YouTube.
We do have a website at www.psmre.org for anybody who's interested.
Did I see correctly, you have some super elevation on the curves?
Yes, all of the mainline curves are super elevated.
And it looks really just very subtle and very smooth. It's hard to tell looking out the cab window, but it looked great, so that's a great job.
It's a lot smoother when you look at the original video. It looked a bit jerky on YouTube, on the Zoom, but the original is definitely smooth.
Lighting on the layout, is it all new LEDs? It looks quite good.
Yeah, recently we took on the project of replacing what we refer to as our undershelf lighting, which was pretty pathetic halogen lighting that was very uneven, and replaced it with LED strips, which you can see in the sections of the video, cab ride video going through Puyallup and Auburn. That coincided with the museums just switched from halogen lighting to LED cans in the overhead lighting, which we don't have much control over. We get to ask them to point things in one direction or another, but there are places in there that the lighting is less than ideal.
How did you mount the LED lights? Were they on metal strips or?
Yeah, we just used aluminum channel, L channel. It's not quite, I think it's like 3/4 by 5/8. And we designed some little clips on screws to hold them up onto the underframe, and adhered it was a high-end lighting, so this actual 3M VBB adhesive and connected with connectors and ran it to a power supply. And there's a software, it's called the Layout Lighting Solution. It's boards and software. That system is controlled the lighting for Union Station and eventually all of the lighting, but the overhead, the undershelf lighting as well. The computer recognizes when things have taken place and will make sure the lighting comes on, so that when patrons are there, the layout is lit properly, but other lights don't run when there's nobody around. For instance, all the signal lights turn off after about 30 minutes. When somebody comes in and pushes the buttons, they don't come back on. Therefore, extending the life of all those things, so we don't, end up prematurely trying to pull a semaphore out of the layout to replace it with LEDs, which is a non-trivial event.
How often do you have to clean the track?
We use ATF, and we have doubled down on that to the extent where we're not even using alcohol any longer. So we apply ATF on a fairly regular basis. The only time we've done cleaning recently is after the extended closure of the museum. They were replacing carpets in nearby sections, and we were concerned for dust buildup on that. But it's a fairly clean environment, and the ATF works very well to keep the trains running with very little stalling. No questions about our op sessions? we were expecting questions about how we conduct those.
Yeah, how do you conduct your op sessions, Steve?
I'll let Marshall handle that one. He knows it better.
Op sessions are held between February and December on the first Saturday of every month. Basically, we have rely on people just showing up. We do have a sign-up board, but a lot of people can't really make decisions that much. But when we have an operating session, we have our operating engineer, who acts as the superintendent. Our positions are superintendent, train master, dispatcher, 3 yard masters, and up to 8 crews. The superintendent will hand out train packets, which we have designed for operability. And they're held out. They are handed out as a first come first serve. After those that have actually signed up, they get first choice, and then the others will get the other packets. And what these packets consist of is a variety of trains. So because of the fact that we are open to the public during operating sessions, the objective is to try to keep something moving on the railroad almost all the time. Therefore, we have a lot of through freights and passenger runs, but we do try to maintain the schedules, the same schedules that were actually run by the real railroads. The trains are named after the actual trains that ran during our period. So we have the pool trains that ran between Seattle and Portland. We have the name freights. The passenger trains are the only scheduled trains. Everything else is run as extra. But these packets all include at least one passenger train, a couple of through freights, and usually one switching operation, so that you get a variety. And they're all scheduled out so that an operator can run each of these during the 4-hour operating session, which usually runs between 11 o'clock in the morning and 3 in the afternoon. We're running a fast clock at 3 to 1, which basically runs a 12-hour period over 4 hours. We run daily between 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., and it's reset every time. All the trains are set and ready to roll, blocked at the beginning of the operating session, so that those coming in basically have something to do within a very short time after the clock has started. After that, we try to run schedule. It usually doesn't last too long, but we start out that way anyway. We're running car card and waybill system with Digitrax, and everything basically has been worked out. It runs fairly smoothly, and of course, with the car card system is self-fixing, so that if something is missed, that it basically will repair itself by the next operating session.
How do you keep the track clean?
We use automatic transmission fluid. We have 5 trains on the main lines and 1 set of RDCs that run the Stampede line. They all operate on the same track, as you noticed in the plan. So it's important that they keep running, because one failure causes the whole layout to shut down. And so we place a drop of ATF about a ½ inch in length on each rail. So a drop between both rails in about 4 or 5 locations on the main line, and occasionally a couple places on the Stampede line. And the trains spread that out. We try to avoid placing it in front of grades, bottom of the grades, because there is a certain amount of velocity, traction, but that's easily balanced by how reliable it makes the railroad run. We get notified when the trains fail, so one of us has to go down and get them started again. Most of the time, it is not related to dirty track. Mostly, it's mechanical failures, locomotive just giving up, or somebody derailing or something like that. So the ATF is very effective in keeping trains running, especially during op sessions. And during op sessions, we'll, at the entrance to yards or key locations, somebody will call for ATF, and we'll come over with a paintbrush and paint a couple drops on and let them run it through the yard, and usually the problems are cleared up.
Well, thank you all very much. This has really been spectacular.
You all come down and see us, huh?
Yep.
We'll try and do that.
Hello again. This is another reminder that this virtual layout tour has been brought to you by members of the 4th Division of the Pacific Northwest region of the National Model Railroad Association. And we hope you've enjoyed it, and we want to encourage you to, again, find out about the NMRA online. Both PNR and NMRA have an excellent website where you can get information about joining and participating in this and other activities like our clinics that are held all over the region. So thank you for joining us today and wish you great modeling.